Hello and welcome to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel. And on today's episode, I'm speaking with Kevin Allen. He is a classically trained pianist, music producer, math teacher, guest speaker, entrepreneur, and YouTuber. From spending 12 years working in corporate to becoming a middle school math teacher to really diving into music and content creation, Kevin has a vast and diverse background. Kevin's been making music for about 15 years and just recently decided to begin sharing his content with the world. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
I am so happy to be here, Carolyn. Great to see you. Great to finally meet you in person. And I'm just really honored to be here and talk a little bit about my journey.
Right. Thank you. It's great to meet you and finally get to talk to you in person here as well. So I understand that, kind of the content creation aspect of what you do is relatively new. So would love to hear kind of how did you get the inspiration to start creating content like podcasts and sharing your music?
Yeah. Great question. I would say as long as I can remember, I've always loved music, listening to music, analyzing music, and even like dabbling in creating music even as a child. When I was in sixth grade, my father and mother parents signed me up for piano lessons. They knew that I was kind of interested in it, so I did one half a year of piano lessons. And then when summer rolled around, I'm like, Mom and Dad, summer's here. Sixth grade just ended. I need a little break from the piano lessons, maybe too. Can I take the summer off and sign back in the fall? And they said, sure. They said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then unfortunately never signed back up in the fall. And then from that moment, from sixth grade, all the way until, and a lot happened in this, 15, 20-year span, but all the way until I turned 30 a few years ago is when I really revisited the piano. And from there, kind of the music production, sound design, all that kind of stuff. And then I would say it kind of got rekindled at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of right on the tail end of me kind of diving deep into the music thing is when I started realizing that I have a true passion for more than just music, but the arts in general, making videos or art. Not so much art like drawing and stuff, because I'm not that good at that, but more so just visuals to accompany my music is something that I just absolutely love, like a sad song that I make or up tempo or something like that, and having some type of visual that kind of corresponds to it. So that's something that I really kind of dove into, and just especially nowadays with social media and stuff, like the world that we're in is a lot more visual. So having both of those together was something that I just really enjoyed exploring. And then right around that time too is when, Caroline, I learned, or not learned, I kind of realized that I've had so many just amazing conversations with people over the past several years. And these conversations really shaped me to kind of help me become who I am today. And around that time, I'm just thinking like, man, a goal of mine eventually is going to be to find a way to record and get some of these conversations in a really, good quality content or good quality way for people to be able to also benefit from them. That was like a thought that I had a few years ago. And that, of course, sort of culminated in me starting my YouTube channel. And that's just another real passion of mine. Like every time I talk to someone, if someone even has an inkling of something that I'm thinking like, wow, that's pretty interesting, or someone else can benefit from learning about that, the wheels start turning. And I already start thinking about, the potential of having this person, if they're interested, having them on. Because like everybody has a story to tell, whether the person has a huge sphere of influence or a small sphere of influence. The idea is like everyone has had experiences that can positively impact someone that they may not even realize. And that's kind of a mission, on with the guests that I have on and everything. And it's been a really amazing journey these past 3 years, or past year really, since I started the YouTube channel, past 3 years with the music stuff. And I'm just really loving sort of the direction that it's going in now.
Wow, that's really interesting that you have this sort of combination of the audio with the music and the visuals that go along with it. And then, of course, the video show, the podcast as well, with interviewing people.
Mm-hmm.
So does all of your content kind of live on the same YouTube channel, or do you have multiple channels?
Yeah, great question. So that's something I really thought about a lot when I was starting out. By all accounts, like all of the stuff that I researched kind of suggested that you really want to niche down or niche down, whichever is the word. I still don't know which one it is, but yeah, you want to have one main topic that you're kind of, kind of focused in on. But I remember at the time when I was really thinking about this, I knew that, it was definitely going to be music centric. That was probably towards the top of the list. I also knew that, my experiences at Verizon for 12 years, conversations that I've had with mentors who I still have, close relationships with to this day, like these types of things, I learned so much that I wanted to share experiences that I had. And we'll certainly get into sort of the main transition from Verizon, sort of outside of Verizon into education. But like talking about that transition, there's really nothing really music related about why I, left a six-figure job to become a math teacher. Like that was a really major part of my journey that I knew people wanted to hear, people I felt needed to hear. But I really had to think about how to kind of group all these things together, or do I want to kind of separate them? What I settled on was having currently at the time and still currently having one YouTube channel, and really exploring kind of how to bring some of these topics together in like a sort of uniform way. And that's kind of the direction I'm going from the YouTube front. But what I just recently sort of realized is on Instagram, I discovered that I have one main Instagram sort of personal page, KAL Experience, which is the name of my YouTube channel and name of my YouTube show. And on that page lived a lot of my music content, most of my music content, and lived clips and promotions for the guest interviews that I've had, some of which with musical guests, some of which with, Mike Mason from Verizon, who's, a leader in the company who I had an awesome opportunity to talk to. And, my thing was trying to figure out strategically, and this has been a fun thing for me these past several months, is like, I have these different things that my toes are dipped in with the music and the interviews and then the tutoring stuff. And so those are three things. And then in addition to that, a very important side of myself, which most people who know me know about this side, but people who are meeting me for the first time or see my content maybe wouldn't know about this side. But I'm just very much someone who's a very funny person. And I love joking around. I love doing weird things. That's just part of who I am. And it's like, I never want to put on a front to not be that. And that's part of things that I enjoy doing, like little clips with my wife, like little videos and pranks and stuff like that. Right. So there's me thinking of all these different avenues and how do I, have channels specific to be able to get these thoughts and ideas out to the right people. And that's what I ultimately settled on, which is having an Instagram. It might sound like a lot for sure saying it this way, but this is kind of what it is. Having an Instagram account for my music stuff specifically, having one that is going to be for more personal stuff, more joking stuff, kind of carefree. If I just want to post something that I think is interesting, as well as the uplifting and the interview stuff, that's like the KAL Experience kind of account, which is gonna house all that stuff. And then my KMAT's tutoring is going to be specific for children, people that need help with math studying for tutoring, as well as like dedicated like little mini math lessons and mini like maybe piano things that I discovered in my piano journey.
Wow. So yeah, that's a real eclectic mix of talents and interests and content. And wow, that's great that you're able to share all your different talents in that way. So yeah, you mentioned your career and that you've made a couple of pivots, and I'd love to learn more about that because, as I understand, you started out in your career really as an engineer, and you've mentioned you've been a math teacher and of course a musician. So yeah, tell me about that whole journey, kind of starting from, your engineering days or around that time, wherever it kind of starts off.
Sure thing. Yeah. So I went to school at Rutgers University and studied electrical and computer engineering there. And I was fortunate enough. I remember we were having, as a freshman, we were having a very important test in electrical circuits class, which was our first like major class within our specific major. Right? It was like introduction principles of electrical engineering. And I remember that the day before the test, there was a big career fair happening at Rutgers. And I went to this career fair knowing that most, and this career fair was specific for electrical engineering majors. I knew that the majority of people that would want to go to this career fair also had this test the next day, including myself. So I knew a lot of people were going to be conflicted. Like, are they going to go here? Are they going to study? I also knew that like my main goal that year was obviously to do good in school, but also I really wanted to land an internship. So I studied beforehand, right? And I knew that the day before I was gonna be doing minimal studying. I was definitely gonna go to this career fair. And I was fortunate enough to land my first internship at Verizon through that career fair, which, as fate would have it, was basically empty. Nobody was there because everyone was studying. I was just bouncing around, just, all right, hey guys, I can just talk to whoever, whatever job I want, I can have any internship here. So I was fortunate enough to have first internship at Verizon in the Network Operations Center in Bedminster. Mm-hmm. And it was a job that was it was a foot in the door job. It was a routine kind of thing that I was doing every day. I was appreciative of the opportunity. Obviously, you have a job over summer, some experience, all that stuff. I wanted to do something else the next summer, which I did. So I interned for 3 years while I was still at Rutgers. And something really kind of amazing happened when I was a senior at Rutgers, and I was interning my last internship at Verizon. There was a full-time job opportunity for the type of job I was doing in the Jersey City MITSO, or the switch is what it's called. And by all accounts, this is a job that a lot of people really, really, really want, and very few people leave this position. So it's very rare that there's an opening here. And because I was an intern, there was like a good chance that I would be able to get this. The thing was, I still had a whole semester at Rutgers to go before I can graduate. So I had to make like a decision of, not graduating, but accepting the job, which could have been something that I could have considered, of course. Graduating, continuing schooling, not accepting the position right away, and then seeing what happens in a few months when I graduate, or being strategic, which is what I ended up doing. And I ended up doing both. I ended up like leveraging some of the experience that I got as a full-time as like a co-op program. So I was able to get credit my senior year for working, which was, from what I understand, unheard of. That's not like a thing that usually happens. But I was able to do that. And the crazy thing is I was able to get tuition reimbursement from my senior year. Exactly. Senior year teaching. Someone was like, Kev, at Verizon, they'd be like, Kev, if you're still in school now, you're working full time. They're like, did you consider, doing the tuition reimbursement here? And I was just excited that I had the job, that I was kind of in that position. But they were like, they told me that, and I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to graduating and then pursuing my master's degree to use the tuition reimbursement and stuff. They were like, no, I'm talking about like, you're in school right now, you can possibly do that. I applied for it and got it, and bought my first car or second car with that money, which was like a crazy, unheard of, just random conversation, but it resulted in something pretty powerful. So that was my first job at Verizon in Jersey City. I worked in a switch, which was a close-knit group of 4 guys that worked there, some of which I still keep in touch with, about 2 guys, which is pretty cool. And my first day there, this is a 24/7 operation, first of all. So a lot of people, it's like 2 guys working this segment, and then they leave, and then 2 more guys, and it kind of just rotates. But my first day there, this was a technician position, and I knew that I had an engineering degree, and I'm like, I want to be an engineer. That's like what I studied for. That's what I want to kind of get to. So my first day, they're like, everyone's curious, who is this new guy? It's a college student. Like, what's he all about? So I go in, I'm like, hey, nice to meet everyone. And I told them, I said, hey, happy to be here, but I'm looking forward to this position being like a stepping stone for me, because I'm looking to eventually get to an engineering role. And, you can imagine these are people who are older than me, who are, providing for their families with this job. That was not something that was smart to say. So I had to really, really work hard to dig myself out of this hole, which I did, and ended up leaving there. And I'll kind of go quickly through like the overall span. I spent 12 years at Verizon and worked maybe about 7 or so different jobs at Verizon, from marketing to product development to engineering to the switch to device testing. And it was an amazing road, amazing experience there. My favorite position was one called Systems Integration Engineer. It was like a perfect blend between project management and engineering. And I just loved that. I loved having my toes in the engineering technical side, but also being like the orchestrator of these migrations that we were doing at the time. And that was a fun time. I really enjoyed it. People came to me and looked at me with respect. Like they respected what I was able to accomplish in that role. And I definitely will never forget that. From that point, I had about two other roles in the company. But towards the end of my time there, when I moved to Baskin Ridge, and I was working in headquarters, is kind of when I started realizing there was something more for me to be doing. And then I'm like, wait a second, like I worked really hard to kind of get to where I am right now, and I'm not stressed at my job, and I have flexibility at my job, and I have, these things that are, it's a good paying job. So it's a lot of positives there. And so I thought so I volunteered for like Big Brothers Big Sisters to get my foot in the door. Around that time, I think it's kind of when I started doing like little one-off kind of tutoring just to kind of start working with children and stuff. But then I soon realized that I needed to take it to the next level. And what kind of ended up happening is when all these thoughts were kind of going on in my brain, is when around that time, my position ended up being eliminated. But I was in a place where it still kind of surprised me a little bit, even though I was kind of anticipating a possibility of it. But what from that moment is kind of where everything else kind of just happened, just kind of crazy. I got the news about being laid off, and this was in November. It happened to be a networking event that same day, and a networking event that wasn't hosted by Verizon, but a lot of people from Verizon were going to be there. I knew about it in advance, and it took all the power in me to like not go home. I was like, let me go to this event, and that changed everything going to this event because I met some amazing people, high ups in the company. And I went there not to find another job, but just to network, just to be myself, and just to talk to some people or anything like that. And a lot of people were taken aback by a person like myself with two masters. I didn't mention about the two master's degrees, but I have two master's degrees, engineering background, a lot of experience in the company, a lot of successes in the company. But unfortunately, the timing of the position I was in, it wasn't me being eliminated, it was the role. But one of the people I met there was looking for someone with experience that I had. He just came out of a workshop on this thing called ThinkSpace, and I had experience in that field. He's like the leader in this organization. He ended up creating a headcount for me by the end of the year against all odds. So that's where I ended up working for one more year. And then when the voluntary severance package came down the pipeline a year later, is when I said, all right, now's the time. Because by that point, I knew that my foot was like already halfway out the door. But I'm like, this is an awesome experience. Let me get some more experience. Let me give back again, because I'm not going to just accept the position that someone opened and just, bake it in. Or I think that's how the phrase goes. But so I worked there for a year, and that's when I left the company without having a teaching role lined up, but knowing that that's what I was absolutely going to do next, continue working on my tutoring business. And having those few months of not having to wake up and go to work was amazing. As you can imagine, having to like work and go to school and do all these things for so many years in our lives, and then having the ability to not have to do that and not be lazy, but be strategic. All right, let me go meet with this person at this college because I think I want to do some adjunct professor. Let me call. I ended up calling a few schools like Rutgers Prep. I called them up, and I ended up landing like a substitute teaching job. So that was my first sort of teaching experience, and I was like, I loved. I was nervous the first day, of course, but after that, I was like, I loved it. This is so fun, like being here, just being myself in front of the students and connecting with them and stuff. So that laid the groundwork for me applying and getting a call back from Princeton Charter School, which is where I currently work, my second year teaching there. And when I tell you my favorite professional, year of working, it's not even really close. It was last year. My first year teaching was just such a amazing experience. There was so many like just moments of, wow, this is really nice. And this is where I belong. I belong here in the classroom working with students and being myself and letting my genuine passion and care for the students, letting that kind of show. And students are so receptive to that, and they understand when teachers do and don't really care and stuff. And it was an amazing experience. During the time teaching there is kind of around the same time that the music stuff started, maybe like a little bit before then. So I had the music stuff going. I had the whole revitalized sort of career, right? I have the teaching stuff where I'm not stressed, and it was fun, and I just truly enjoyed it. Great school, great students, great staff. Then come home and I'm starting to work on my YouTube channel and starting to work on my music, spend time with the wife, all that stuff. So it was a lot of really nice stuff last year that really laid the groundwork for kind of where I'm at right now, which is the tutoring business. I can mention it. I just posted something on Instagram because it's kind of a big deal for me, hitting a $1,000 net income from my clients in 1 week for the first time. And so for me, like working so hard, teaching during the day, having about 4 hours every day between my math tutoring and piano lessons that I'm working with students on, this is the time where I think in the future I'll be able to look back and say this is like the hardest that I've ever worked. I mean, there's other times I worked hard, of course, for sure, but like it's like pressing a little bit, right? Having something to do pretty much almost every hour of the day. But I know it's not going to be that way forever. I'm laying the groundwork for what the next steps are. So that's a lot of words there, but that's kind of, I guess, an overview of how everything kind of ended up going.
That's amazing. And just the stories of, I think one thing to take away is like the importance of networking and even getting out to those networking events, even if maybe you're not in the mood to go, or maybe they're not your thing. But it sounds like those, you mentioned 2 critical events that you went to that you found opportunities to continue moving your career forward. And 2, I would love to learn more about, because it sounds like by the time you were ready to move on from your work in engineering and sort of do more teaching, you had already sort of started exploring teaching or doing some tutoring perhaps. So I guess at what point in your career did you realize, I want to do something more meaningful, and what that is teaching? That's what I want to do. Teaching math, teaching music. And sort of how did you kind of start, I guess, fostering that interest while you were working so that you could make that transition?
Yeah, definitely. I do have quite a strong recollection of when this would have actually been, which is kind of surprising now that I think about it, but this would have been in my second job in the company. So when I started full time at Verizon, was in Jersey City. I spent 2 years in the switch, and then I moved to Bedminster as a device tester. And towards the middle or tail end of that position is when I started having the thoughts and really brainstorming, pen and paper at home, and just saying, all right, what is it that I'm good at? What do I enjoy doing? And I tell a lot of people this, and is trying to find the intersection. And I think back to, I have a younger sister and an older brother. I think back to growing up, how much I enjoyed, teaching math to her, right? Growing up, and she didn't enjoy it. She tells me that she kind of just did not like me explaining it. And the way she would explain it is she would say that, like, I guess I would get so enthusiastic about what I'm explaining, and like my enthusiasm made her less enthusiastic, so she just didn't care about. Yeah, she's pretty funny. But so that was something that I thought about. Wow, I enjoyed doing that. I also am very aware of how when something comes natural to you, Carolyn, and you kind of have like a thing that comes natural to you, where some people may say it to you like, wow, you're such a blank, and such a good thing, right? Why you're so blank, or you're such a, this type of person, you probably might think kind of like how I did, which is I never really thought of myself that way because it's just who I am. It's just, it comes natural. I'm not actively thinking about that when I act that way. So when I think about being a patient person and someone who's very even keeled and, unflappable, maybe is a good word, I think that element of me and my love and knowledge on the mathematics subject and being a Black male, those things together, I said, all right, there's something here. There's a ton of people in the world who struggle with math. I know that for a fact. I know that a lot of people just do not like math, and I love it. And so when I work with students, fast forward a little bit about like sort of my mentality of having the workshops, workshops and tutoring, I really make sure to tell students, like, my goal is not to make you love math. I want you to understand it, and I want you to hopefully appreciate it. Appreciate the idea that I give you a problem and you could go a different route to get to the answer, and I can go a different route, but we can arrive at the same answer. Like that type of thing is I think cool and interesting. The thing, like you said, or the question that you asked, it all happened when I was at that second job. And that's when I started having those thoughts I alluded to earlier about, what would it look like doing something else? And that was what, 4 years in the company, but I ended up not leaving the company until 8 more years later. But I knew that eventually, when things, I at the time, I felt like there was more for me to do at Verizon, and looking and back in hindsight, for sure that was the case. There were more people for me to meet. There were more experiences for me to get, for me to kind of foster. And I think one of the sort of major things, you were talking about networking just now, one of the major things that I love is that the stuff that I learned at Verizon, the importance of networking, that is coming just absolutely full circle now. From the standpoint of me interviewing guests now, that is all about networking. It's about me reaching out to people and being mindful about their time, and being mindful about them maybe not knowing me, and like sort of what is in it for them type of a thing, like building my platform so that it's worthwhile, that type of thing. And then them saying, oh, you should talk to so-and-so because they're also into this. And it just kind of happens organically. And that's kind of what I'm seeing now. And, a lot of people may not, I'm sure a lot of people know the importance of networking, but I would say that being able to apply it to something that I'm more passionate about and something I care deeply about, and being able to do it so sort of eloquently is, and I guess naturally, is something that I'm loving to see, like what that's creating, what opportunities that's creating.
Yeah. And it's wonderful to really be able to network in the context of something that you're really passionate about, because networking, it's really, it's making that connection and having, like a true conversation with someone. Sometimes networking gets a bad rap and people kind of have a negative connotation with it, but really, if it's something that you're doing, that you're passionate about, that you care about, and you find kind of other people who share that interest and on certain levels with you. So I know from me having a podcast, it's kind of been a great excuse to network, in that I've just met a lot of great people because I have a platform, and a lot of people come on who have, sort of wonderful stories to share. And I'm sure you have the same experience as well with your shows.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Yeah. There's so many people with stories to tell. And I think that if you're like, so you might be able to relate with me on this, is that, like, I remember in trainings when I was at Verizon, and this was it's not a random thought. It's like it's a thing that happened in a conversation that really opened my eyes up a lot. I was in training, and there was a whole bunch of people there, and during lunchtime, I was sitting with a few other people, and we were just talking about what we do and background and stuff like that. And I remember saying, I was like, yeah, I'm an engineer, so I have an engineering background. At the time, I probably was doing device marketing or something at the company. And everyone's like, engineer? Wow. Like that, like you don't seem like an engineer. Like, you seem more sort of like personable and this and that, like, like the sort of idea of an engineer, like quiet or reserved or whatever, that type of thing. So that spoke to me at that moment, where their reactions really said a lot to me. Like, okay, I have the aptitude to be able to get through that curriculum and understand it, but my personality is one that is different than what most people would perceive as an engineer. So that was one thing that happened in that conversation, where I'm like, okay, something like I need to be communicating with people. I need to be on stage talking, or like doing something that's like, galvanizing people, that type of thing. At that time I was thinking. And then another thing that happened at the time that made me really think about, I think it kind of, made me think more strongly about the tutoring and mentoring thing, is I forget how it came up in conversation, but some conversation about counseling came up probably during that same day. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, man, I'm someone who cares deeply about people. Like, if you right now were to tell me, like, Kevin, thank you so much for being on, but I really need someone to talk to about X, Y, and Z, something I'm going through, like instantly I'm going to be like, let's talk. Like, I just like care about, like, we just met today, but I want to like help people through their issues and stuff, which is, I think, a good trait, good quality. No, I know it's a good trait, good quality. My sister, second time she's coming up in the conversation, she's someone who advised me about the importance of not always like giving advice, sometimes just listening.
Yeah.
And that's been challenging for me sometimes to kind of know that, like, if she has something to share with me, like sometimes it's better to just listen to what she has to say. Maybe she's not saying it because she needs something to do. She just needs to, be able to say something. So that was something I was aware about. But back to the counseling thing, I remember thinking like, man, in an alternate universe, I could 1000% see myself in an office, sitting on one of those chairs. I've been on the other end. I've been to some counseling sessions, stuff, which I think is, by the way, like, I think everyone should do it. I think everyone should do counseling. I think everyone should do marriage counseling. I think marriage counseling should be like a requirement for the first year of marriage. So like, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but we had such a great experience, my wife and I, and I just think that it's super important. And so anyone listening out there, if you're thinking about it, go look up marriage counseling and go check that out. But I was just thinking about how that sitting in a room where it's like, oh, Mr. Allen or Kevin Allen's office, and then helping people overcome their challenges is something that to me was like an absolute perfect fit. I feel like I would love doing that. But I'm like, so I thought for a tiny bit of time, like, man, what would it look like for me to go back and have my engineering and 2 masters, but go back and study counseling? Like, can I do this? Can I do it? And then I'm like, no, that's not on the cards right now. I'm not passionate about that, but I can find a way to do something similar. And what did I do? That's kind of what's going on right now, right? That's kind of a little bit with the conversations with people on my show to help inspire other people who may be watching, but certainly a lot more with the students that I'm working with one-on-one and tutoring and mentoring them. And it's been just an amazing journey. One that when you were giving my bio just now, it reminded me about my plan of mine, maybe by the end of next year. It's like long term, but I want to make it good. But like to write a book about this journey from like a few years ago to, to nowish, about kind of, I think things are like taking off right now, and in the most beautiful way. And now it's like all the stuff that I did up to this point needs to be, I think, chronicled. And that's going to be something that I think will be a lot of fun to work on.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, to just have so many different interests and areas that you're talented in. And it sounds like you've really been able to combine a lot of your strengths and your skills into this kind of unique career path that I think a lot of people could really learn from and be inspired from. It's a lot of people have things that they'd like to do, and sometimes they're stuck or they just don't know how to go forward or what to do. So I think your example would be just really powerful for people. So that's really cool. Good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would love to kind of, I guess we're getting close to the end of our time here. Would love to kind of give you an opportunity to give a bit of a shout out for your show. Maybe, I don't know if there's anything you need for your show, if you need guests or if you just want people to subscribe to your YouTube channel. Definitely let us know more about how we can find and listen to your interviews on YouTube.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. So it hasn't always been this way. When people ask for my show, my info on YouTube, when I first started, I would have to like have them look up K_Al space experience, like spell it out. And it's like hard to say sometimes. You're like yelling across the street or something. But so now you can look up my name on YouTube. You can look up Kevin Allen, Kevin, Kevin space Allen. Probably can look it up without the space. It probably will show up now because I have enough traction there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, definitely my biggest place right now is my YouTube channel, and secondary will probably be my Instagram account. So definitely the YouTube channel. If you go there, you're going to see playlists set up with all my interviews. So I have actually 50. I just hit my 50th episode of K.Al Experience. First 10 or so have been just me. And then from there is when I started introducing guests, and of all walks of life, just great conversations, ones that will eventually get moved into the actual podcast format, just audio. I'm going to be moving those over once I find the time or the person to do that for me. But just because I think, they would serve very well because it's a conversational kind of thing. But yeah, that stuff, and a lot of my music content is on there as well. A lot of my piano stuff and a lot more like music production. So you definitely could check that out. And then Instagram would be the second place you can look at. which is K_AL experience. KAL experience is my main Instagram handle. Like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be others, but they'll all be intertwined. I'll be tagging the other ones so that, because they kind of are all a little bit related, a little intersection between the three. So you can definitely check me out there. And my website is kalexperience.com. That has just more information about myself and stuff. I would definitely love to stay connected. Right now, I'm taking a little break on interviewing new guests. I've reached a point. It was actually interesting. Right now, I have about 8 to 9 either guests or episodes. And when I say episodes, I have like one of which with like 3 people on, but eight to 9 of them that have been recorded but not released yet. And what was happening was I had, all of these ideas, and I'm like, okay, every week, every Wednesday from whatever 6 to 9 is like my interview day. So I was like really doing every single week, sometimes back to back on Wednesdays, and I was just accruing all these guests, which was awesome. But then I was just realizing, like, in order to get these out the right way, like edit them, take my time, not feel rushed to do it, I had to take a break, because even right now there's still like maybe 20 to 30 people that I've reached out to, and again, all walks of life. One of them just through social media. One of them is like she posts like amazing pictures of her she's like a marine biologist, not like, she is a marine biologist, and she posts like pictures of her underwater and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, this sounds amazing. I want to know about this, and therefore this is a perfect opportunity to have her on. So I reached out. That's just one example. But then I realized, like, all right, I need to get these episodes out first, and then get closer to being done with them, and then start, scheduling on and using your eloquent Calendly, hard to say, but using that to kind of help take some of the stress off of sending those emails. That was becoming a nightmare, having to look at the dates and do all that. I was like, all right, there has to be a better way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I can totally relate to having a lot of interviews and then having a bunch of recordings to edit and then feeling like this isn't going to come out for 6 months. So yeah,
Right.
absolutely understand the pacing. So no, that's wonderful. I mean, that's great that there's such an interest in your show, and there's going to be even more and more episodes, and yeah, really excited about that. So yeah, I will put the links to your website and your Instagram and your YouTube in the show notes of the podcast, so people can just click on them and visit from there.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. I was going to say one more thing too.
Yep.
I was telling my wife the other day about, like, I have a few artists slash celebrities, people that are, very popular, who I really just like their work a lot. And I have a goal of mine set that I want to talk to every single one of them before, like, eventually on my YouTube channel. And what's interesting and fun, I didn't put it on my board over there yet, but just like kind of thinking about that, like, I know that if that's what, I mean, that's not, it's not like once I do it, like I've made it, I can go, retire on an island, but it's certainly something that I will do. And I'm excited about sort of having that, like working towards that kind of like, and I'm sure you could probably relate to this too, like sort of building your platform up to a point where people are now reaching out to you to want to be on. And so getting close to that point, and then you can't obviously say yes to everyone. At some point, it's kind of like, okay, you have to kind of pick and choose and be strategic. But I'm excited about that being a goal of mine. And I'm excited to learn from these individuals. One of them is Dave Chappelle. So these are all like art, like comedians and artists and stuff. So Dave Chappelle, he's just amazing. He's so funny, but he can be on stage just talking about whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's so smart, and he's such a thinker. And I absolutely just love just hearing him talk every single time. So he's one person. One person is an artist, musical artist named Tyler, the Creator, who kind of changed things a lot for me musically, because he came into the game as a completely different artist than he is now. He recently won the hip hop album of the year award, even though his album is not a hip hop album, as he would say, and as fans of his would say. It's a culmination of all these different genres, and it's like, it is so different than what he came out with when he first came up. And to me, as someone who makes music that is destined for video games or commercials or cartoons or shows or movies, that's where my music is going to live, like once it, reaches the right person, as opposed to, for artists to sing or rap over or something. That the type of stuff that he made on there. He's also, a pianist, so you can hear the theory and the chord progressions and stuff, and it just kind of blows my mind. So he's someone I definitely want to talk to. The next person is someone by the name, a producer, director, actor by the name of Jordan Peele. Have you ever heard of the movie called Get Out before?
I have. Oh, Jordan Peele. Oh, yeah, from Key and
Key
Peele,
and
the
Peele,
early days, and of course, he's had
yes.
such an amazing career for years and
So
years.
so amazing, and so yeah. I mean, that show I didn't watch it when it was out, but now on YouTube it's like it's the perfect medium for those sketches, and it's so funny. And Get Out, I absolutely just was obsessed with, and I even watched him when he was on Mad TV, well even before then. So he's someone, and then last but not least is someone named Childish Gambino, who's like, you've heard of Jamie Foxx. You guys know Jamie Foxx. If you don't know Childish Gambino, he's kind of like that in a stand-up comic, actor, singer, rapper, and producer. He does like kind of does it all, and just does it. So he has a show called Atlanta, which is like a extremely smart and like clever and just interesting show. So these are guys that influence me in terms of their artistic direction and their attention to detail. And yeah, I'm excited. Next time we talk, maybe I'll have had a conversation with at least one of them.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm thinking the common thread through all of the people who you just mentioned is that they're all other very talented multi-creatives. So, they have incredible talent in multiple areas that sort of bring together all of their art. So no, that's fantastic. Right. Yeah, I absolutely believe in kind of putting that out in the universe and saying like, these are the people I want to interview. And, I've had the opportunity to interview people who I very much admiring of. I still have other people on the list I'm trying to get to, but absolutely, it's going to happen. So I'm excited to follow up with you and hear those episodes when you get to talk to them.
And right back at you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's wonderful. Yeah. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being on my show. I enjoyed our conversation. I think it's, loved learning about your career journey. I think that's going to be really inspiring and exciting for people. And just loved learning about all of the great art and wonderful teaching and coaching, all the great things that you're doing these days. So thanks again for sharing your story on my show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I had this date marked off on the calendar, and I'm super excited to be here and excited to hear the finished product.
Great. Thank you. Thanks again.